Elon Musk prepares a birthday filled with wonder. Balloons, rockets, even a custom pendant. But his son stares at the floor and says just 6 words that stop everything. "Where should I get cake?" he whispers, "if he doesn't get a blanket." What happened next changed Elon's view of giving forever. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The morning sun crept gently through the tall windows of Elon Musk's home, casting long streaks of gold across the polished floor. It was quiet, almost reverent, like the calm before a great celebration. Downstairs, everything had been arranged with precision. A cake shaped like a SpaceX rocket stood proudly at the center of the table, its icing perfect, not a detail missed. Beside it, a sleek telescope waited, wrapped in silver paper. And beside that, Elon's favorite gift of all, a small pendant he had personally chosen, engraved with the coordinates of the stars the night his son was born. He stood back and took in the scene. For a moment, pride flickered in his chest. This was going to be special. He had cleared his schedule, pulled favors to get the telescope shipped early, even asked his mother what kind of cake X liked when he was a toddler. Elon believed he had thought of everything. He walked upstairs, quietly, a smile just beginning to form. He imagined X's face lighting up, the way it used to when he talked about Mars. But when he opened the door, the picture he had in his mind shattered. X was sitting on the floor, cross-legged in his pajamas, staring out the window. The walls were covered in space posters and hand-drawn rockets, but today, he didn't seem to see them. He didn't even turn when Elon entered. "Happy birthday, buddy," Elon said softly. There was a long silence. Then, without looking up, X said flatly, "I don't want a birthday this year." Elon froze in the doorway. The words landed like ice. For a man who built dreams into reality, nothing had prepared him for this quiet refusal. He stepped closer, unsure of what to say next. Elon sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, unsure of what to say. He glanced at his son, who still hadn't looked up. The silence stretched. Then X spoke, his voice soft but clear. "Last week, when we were driving back from the lab, you didn't see him," he paused. "But I did. He was sitting by the fence near the bridge. No shoes, just a plastic bag wrapped around his feet." Elon blinked. He searched his memory but came up empty. He hadn't noticed. "Hell was cold," X continued, his voice trembling slightly. "He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. People walked past like he wasn't even real." Elon's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I don't want a birthday," X said again. "Not if he gets nothing. It doesn't feel right." Elon stared at his son, words caught in his throat. He had built electric cars, launched rockets, bought companies. But none of it felt like enough in that moment. A boy who had everything was grieving for someone who had nothing. He swallowed hard. Then, gently, he asked, "What do you want to do instead?" X finally looked up. His eyes were clear, determined, and suddenly older than his years. Elon sat quietly in his office later that night, the birthday cake untouched on the counter, the telescope still in its packaging. Outside, the moon hung low and silent. He thought back to his own 6th birthday. There had been no telescope, no cake, just a quiet kitchen in Pretoria and the sharp ache of being forgotten. His father hadn't come home until late, and by then Elon had already gone to bed. His mother had tried. She always tried. But the memory was more gray than golden. He remembered how, growing up, emotions had felt like liabilities. Feel too much, and you get hurt. Dream too much, and you're mocked. So he buried it all, turned to numbers, to logic, to code, and it worked. at least professionally. But something had gone quiet inside. Now here he was, watching his son reject everything Elon once thought mattered. Not for attention, not out of rebellion, but because he couldn't bear to enjoy something while someone else suffered. Elon's mind wandered to something his mother once told him when he was around 10 and didn't understand why he felt so empty after a science fair win. "Wonder fades when we stop feeling," she'd said. He never really understood those words, until now. X hadn't just noticed the boy by the bridge, he had carried him in his heart. That weight, that ache, had shaped his decision to give up a birthday. Elon realized it wasn't just a one-time gesture. It was a window into who his son was becoming. He closed his eyes and let the thoughts settle. His son didn't need more things. He needed to be seen, protected, nurtured, not for his brilliance or potential, but for his heart. "These 6, Elon thought, and already sees what I've missed for decades." The next morning, Elon found X already dressed, sitting by the front door with a backpack on his lap. Inside were a box of crackers, a bottle of water, and a small hand-drawn note that simply said, "I see you. I want to find him," X said without hesitation. "The boy from the bridge." Elon hesitated. Security teams, media risks, his schedule, but none of it seemed to matter now. He nodded. "Okay, let's go." They stepped out into the chilly morning. Elon drove but let X guide. They stopped at traffic lights, scanned sidewalks, slowed near alleyways. It was hours before X finally whispered, "That's the spot." The next morning, Elon found X already waiting by the front door, fully dressed, with his backpack zipped and ready. His small hands clutched the straps tightly, and his face was set with quiet determination. Inside the pack were a box of crackers, a bottle of water, and a folded piece of paper that read, in his crooked handwriting, "I see you. I want to find him," X said plainly. "The boy from the bridge." Elon hesitated. Normally, a request like this would be met with logistical questions. Scheduling, safety, media risk. But none of that seemed important anymore. He nodded once. "Let's go." They drove slowly through the city, the Tesla humming quietly beneath them. X pointed out landmarks, trying to retrace the exact route from the week before. They turned down side streets, past shuttered storefronts and cracked sidewalks. Hours passed before they reached the overpass, where X thought he had seen the boy. He wasn't there. A torn jacket hung on the chain-link fence, sleeves flapping in the wind. X stared at it for a long time. Elon waited, unsure whether to speak. Then, just a few yards away, a man emerged from behind a dumpster, bundled in worn layers, his eyes dull with exhaustion. Without a word, X approached him. He opened his bag, pulled out the crackers, and extended them with both hands. The man blinked in surprise. "For me?" X nodded. "And this." He handed him the note. The man unfolded it, read the words slowly, and something shifted in his expression, like a window had opened. He looked back at X, eyes now misted. "No one said anything like that to me in years." Elon watched from a few steps away, frozen. It was a simple moment, but it held a depth he couldn't explain. His son, just 6 years old, was doing something most adults wouldn't dare. Looking suffering in the face and responding with gentle dignity. They continued walking the streets, X stopping whenever he saw someone in need. He gave away a pair of gloves, a toy rocket, even his favorite granola bar. Each time he paused to meet their gaze. He didn't rush. He didn't flinch. Elon remained mostly silent, his hands deep in his coat pockets, his thoughts heavier than usual. The world he operated in, algorithms, aerospace, and high-stakes ventures, suddenly felt far removed from the cracked sidewalks and tattered blankets around him. His empire seemed weightless here. By afternoon, the sun dipped behind the buildings, casting long shadows down the narrow alleys. They walked back toward the car, their steps slower now. Elon opened the door for X, who stopped before climbing in. "Can we do more tomorrow?" X asked. Elon looked at him closely. His face was flushed from the cold, his eyes tired, but his voice held something strong. "Hope." "Yes," Elon said softly. "We'll pack what we'd want if we were cold." X nodded once, then climbed into the car. As they pulled away, Elon glanced in the rearview mirror. The jacket was still on the fence, waving in the wind like a silent promise, and in that moment, he realized this wasn't a one-day gesture. It was the beginning of something far bigger than a missed birthday or a good deed. It was the start of a new kind of mission, one that didn't need launch codes or algorithms, but something far more powerful: compassion. The next day, Elon cleared his calendar. Meetings could wait. Memos could be missed. But this thing growing in his son's heart, was something he couldn't afford to overlook. That morning, they sat side by side on the floor of the living room, a stack of empty tote bags between them. X had a checklist he'd drawn in crayon: gloves, snacks, water bottles, socks, toothbrushes, and notes, each handwritten by him. Elon opened a box of wool gloves and started placing pairs into bags. X folded notes slowly, one at a time. Some said, "You matter." Others said, "You're not alone." One had a smiley face holding an umbrella. Elon glanced at it, then looked at his son. "The umbrellas?" he asked gently. "In case it rains in their heart," X said, without lifting his head. Elon nodded, unable to speak. By noon, the kits were ready. They packed them into the trunk and headed back to the city. This time they knew where to go. Word had spread. People waited quietly near bus stops, shelters, even behind dumpsters. X stepped out of the car with quiet purpose, handing out the bags one by one. Elon followed, still unsure what to say, but more certain with every step that this was important. Then they met her. An older woman, wrapped in two mismatched sweaters, sat alone under a scaffolding near an empty lot. Her hands trembled as X knelt beside her and handed her a kit. She took it slowly, looking at the bag like it was made of glass. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought people forgot me." X looked at her and said, softly but clearly, "I didn't." She began to cry. Elon stood frozen a few feet away. Something inside him cracked open. In all his years solving problems, he had never once made someone feel this remembered, this seen. And it hadn't come from a product or a pitch. It had come from the heart of a child. As they drove home, X fell asleep in the backseat, one hand still curled around a crayon. Elon's mind spun. The trunk was empty now, the bags all handed out, but his heart wasn't. It was fuller than it had been in years. Yet beneath the warmth, a quiet doubt stirred. He'd always believed in scaling, in systems, in building solutions that multiplied. That's what made SpaceX work, what made Tesla thrive. But love? Compassion? Could they scale too? Could this simple act, two people handing out kindness, become something bigger? He gripped the steering wheel tighter. Can love scale like rockets? He asked himself. It haunted him the rest of the way home. That night, after dinner, Elon lit a small candle on the windowsill. X sat nearby, drawing again. Bears, stars, tiny rockets filled the page. But in the corner he drew something new. A hand holding another hand. Elon stared at it in silence. The flame from the candle danced gently in the glass. Not loud, not proud, but steady, constant. For all his accomplishments, this moment felt more meaningful than any launch he'd ever led. There were no countdowns, no headlines. Just light, soft, flickering, but real. He leaned back and watched the candle as it flickered in the quiet room. Is this, he wondered, what it means to build light? The following weekend, Elon and X visited a local shelter. It was tucked away between two faded buildings on a quiet street. Elon had arranged it discreetly. No press, no fanfare. Just a quiet promise kept. Inside, the kitchen buzzed with clattering trays and the smell of soup. Volunteers moved quickly, but not without care. X stood in the doorway, his eyes wide, an oversized apron tied around his waist and a hairnet nearly slipping over his eyes. Elon knelt to adjust it. "You good?" he asked. X nodded. "I want to say something to everyone." Elon raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. He watched as his son stepped up to the food line, tiny hands grasping a ladle almost too big for him. And then, one by one, the guests began to come through. Each time someone approached, X handed them a tray and smiled brightly. "Happy birthday," he said. The first man paused, confused. "What?" "Happy birthday," X repeated with a grin. "Just in case no one told you today." Some smiled back. Others laughed. A few looked down and wiped their eyes before taking their food. Elon watched it all unfold from the side of the room, his hands folded, his heart heavy and light all at once. Then a man stepped forward, tall, broad shoulders, worn boots, a veteran's patch sewn onto his sleeve. He looked at X for a long moment. "You're the one I heard about," the man said. "The birthday kid who gave it all away." X nodded, still smiling. The man's voice cracked. "I served overseas. Came back with nothing. Most people look right through me now." X handed him a tray and said softly, "I see you." The man swallowed hard. He looked over at Elon. "Your son reminded me I still matter." Elon opened his mouth, but no words came. His throat tightened, eyes burning. He turned away for a moment, breathing through the sudden wave. He had never cried at a rocket launch, never wept when stock prices soared or when history books wrote his name beside great accomplishments. But now, in a shelter full of strangers, watching his son speak hope into broken hearts, Elon felt something shift. Later, they sat outside on the curb, legs dangling, paper cups of cocoa warming their hands. The sky above was soft and gray, and the buzz of the shelter hummed behind them. Elon looked over. "You did good in there." X shrugged. "They just needed someone to say happy birthday." Elon smiled, humbled by the simplicity of it all. The world he operated in was built on grand ideas. Missions to Mars, quantum leaps in AI. But here, love had shown up in the smallest gesture. After a few minutes of silence, X spoke again, quieter this time. "We can't stop just because my birthday ends." Elon turned to him slowly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," X stared down at his empty cup, "if we only care when it's our birthday, or Christmas, or when people are watching, then it's not real. People are still cold tomorrow." Elon nodded, the words sinking deep. And he knew in that moment, this wasn't just his son's turning point. It was his too. A few days after the shelter visit, Elon found X sitting on the floor of his room, surrounded by sheets of paper. Crayons were scattered everywhere, reds, browns, blues, and X was focused, tongue peeking from the corner of his mouth as he sketched. Elon stepped closer and knelt down, curious. Each page told a story. There were rockets flying over cities, stars blinking down from above, and mittened hands reaching out to hold others. One drawing showed a boy sitting on the sidewalk, shivering, while a little bear approached with a scarf. Above it, in shaky lettering, X had written, "Someone remembered." Elon picked up the notebook and turned the pages slowly, something stirring deep inside him. That night the idea came to him, not in a brainstorm session, not in a boardroom, but in the quiet hush of his son's drawings. He called it the Winter Light Initiative. It wouldn't be flashy, no press releases, no logos, just neighbors helping neighbors, quiet acts of warmth and dignity. The next weekend, Elon opened the garage and turned it into a packing center. SpaceX employees showed up with gloves, blankets, socks, and granola bars. Neighbors brought handmade scarves. One elderly woman came with 10 paper bags, each filled with cookies and a handwritten poem. X worked beside them all, checking off the lists and adding one more thing to every box. A small drawing. Some were stars, others were smiling suns. One he tucked into the folds of a wool blanket, carefully taped down so it wouldn't get lost. It was a bear, soft and round, holding a heart. "This is for the boy who didn't have one," X explained. The volunteers packed hundreds of kits. They were dropped off at shelters, bus terminals, and rest stops. Some were handed out by employees on their lunch breaks. Others were left quietly on benches, waiting to be found. No one signed their name. That was part of it. Elon stood back one evening, watching the last box being sealed. He felt something different than the thrill of innovation or the pressure of profit. This was slower, deeper. It felt like building not machines or markets, but something invisible. X walked over, holding a candle in a jar he had made himself. "It's for the window." Elon nodded, accepting it with care. He held the flickering light in both hands and looked around the room, now empty but echoing with the sound of something far greater than applause. He whispered to himself, "I used to design rockets. Now I help light candles." The evening was quiet. No guests, no balloons, no music playing in the background. Just a soft flicker of candlelight dancing across the kitchen table. Elon and X sat together, elbows resting on the wooden surface, 2 mugs of warm cocoa steaming gently between them. Outside, the world continued in its usual rhythm. Cars passing, lights blinking, people moving. But inside, time seemed to pause. The silence wasn't heavy. It was full, peaceful, the kind that follows when something right has been done. The birthday cake remained untouched in the refrigerator. Elon hadn't brought it out. There was no telescope waiting to be unwrapped, no pendant to be worn. But there was something far more lasting in the room tonight. Something unseen but deeply felt. Elon looked across at his son, his face lit by the soft candlelight. "Do you think you'll remember this birthday?" he asked. X didn't answer right away. He sipped his cocoa slowly, eyes thoughtful, legs swinging beneath the chair. Then he looked up and said, "I think this is the first one I felt." The words struck something deep in Elon, deeper than logic, deeper than memory. It wasn't just that his son had sacrificed his celebration. It was that he had turned it into something sacred. Elon swallowed hard, his voice thick. "It's the one I'll never forget." X smiled faintly and leaned his head against his father's shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, not speaking, letting the warmth of the room and the hush of the candle carry them. No headlines would report this. No history books would record it. But in Elon's heart, it would echo longer than any applause or achievement ever had. This birthday, stripped of presents and praise, had given them something else: connection, purpose, peace. And as the candlelight danced across the glass, Elon understood something he had missed for years. Sometimes the smallest flame is enough to light the whole room. The world doesn't change in one day, but sometimes a birthday can change one heart. Elon now keeps X's notebook beside his desk, its pages folded and soft from being read over and over. The drawing of the bear, the umbrella for when it rains in the heart, the hand reaching out to hold another. All of it reminds him what matters most. And in the window of their home, the candle still flickers. It isn't lit for decoration. It's a symbol, a quiet vow. That warmth is not something to be stored away. It's something to be shared. Not just on holidays, not just during winter, but always. We may not all have rockets or resources, but we have something just as powerful: our attention, our care, and our choice to act. If this inspiring story stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Live it. Because one child's question lit a candle in his father's heart, and from that single flame, others began to glow. Let's keep building warmth, one small act at a time. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there will say, "I thought people forgot me." And someone like X will answer, "I